Hello and welcome to this video. This video is going to be called Everything You Need to Know About Copyright and Why Copyright Now Should Change. That's what I'm going to call it. It has been motivated by my copyright strike that happened at the weekend. I then did a response video to that. I gave my opinion, and a lot of the comments that I then read and the sort of pushback against me, which was sort of along the lines of, you know you broke the rules. If you broke the rules, you should be punished with a copyright strike. And I thought, these people don't understand what copyright is. They don't realize how it's enacted. They don't know what breaking the rules is and what the punishments should be and how they can change, and some of the contradictions and downright hypocrisy that exists in the system that now exists online, because copyright was created for basically the oncoming mass media movement, which has fundamentally changed. Now, I'm going to start this lecture, because this is what this is. I am doing a lecture here. This isn't the normal sort of video I do. I'm going to try and be precise. I'm going to try and back up what I'm saying. I am going to be objective, and I'm going to try and give you a lot of information. In doing that, I need to back up what I'm saying. But my intention on this video is to use as little copyrighted material out in the real world as I possibly can. But straight away as we start, it is almost impossible for me to go forward without defining what copyright is, right? And once we've defined it, my definition, you would accuse me of being subjective and biased if I was to give you my definition. So I have to go out into the world and get somebody else's intellectual property and put it into this video here. And then the question becomes, is me doing this fair use? Right now, obviously, the fair use rules, hopefully, mean that this use is fair use. Okay, I want you to bear that in mind. So this video is going to have two levels to it. There's going to be me talking to you about copyright, but by the same token, this is my intellectual property, and there will be stuff in this that is not my intellectual property. That painting there is my intellectual property, as is that one, right? But that photograph is not my intellectual property. I have the name Ibanez there on that t-shirt, right? That is not my intellectual property, but they are benefiting there for the advertising they're getting. So even in this situation, and I've got to admit, this camera's a little bit wonky, isn't it? I don't like that. I need, my anal retentive side wants to get this straight. That is better. So there I have shown you the three considerations. The fact that part of this is my creativity, part of this is my aesthetic vision, which involves things that go beyond the subject matter, form and content in the arts. That's a really important point. And also, this will naturally contain other people's intellectual property. So let's read a definition out that belongs to somebody else. And it actually belongs to a website called www.copyright.gov. And here, this is their definition of what copyright is. I quote, "Copyright is a type of intellectual property that protects original works of authorships as soon..." I'm reading off a laptop and it just went black as I'm reading it. And I was trying to do a proper lecture and look professional. I can't do it. I'll read it out again. I might cut that out. Or I might just leave it in. Because surely that random thing that just happened shows that even when you try to take someone else's intellectual property, the nature and chaos of art means it's naturally changed. And is that an idea we can go with? I don't know. But you just saw an example of that. You can sit back and think whether that is the case. Anyway, I'm going to try and do it again. Definition from www.copyright.gov, and I quote, "Copyright is a type of intellectual property that protects original works of authorship as soon as an author fixes the work in a tangible form of expression." Tangible. Can't just be in your head. You can't just have an idea. In copyright law, there are lots of different types of works, including paintings, photographs, illustrations, musical compositions, sound recordings, computer programs, books, poems, blog posts, movies, architectural works, plays, and so much more. End quote. Although there was a little bit of me in the middle of that. I have to say that "and so much more" at the end is doing a lot of vague heavy lifting, isn't it? It's a lot of vague heavy lifting. Really. You know, if I was to turn around and say that this video is like one giant, you know, is one small step for YouTubers, but a giant leap for YouTube. True as that statement would be, have I breached copyright? Is that tangible? Is that phrase copyrightable? That is my introduction. That is my definition. Let's go on to part 2, which is going to be called Origins. In this section of the video, I have collected a whole bunch of notes from various places which outline the origins of copyright. I have them written down there. Some of it is copied and pasted. Some of it is my words. I am now going to try and look at that and paraphrase it for you, which means I am no longer breaching copyright. The words I'm about to say, which describe the origins, are my words. But in all honesty, is it really my words? Well, it's my words, but is it my opinions? I am just transmitting from the great, reservoir of knowledge that's on the internet now, other people's ideas of what the origins of copyright is. And this is something that's dealt with postmodernism when they say that there is no author. The death of the author is the idea that I am just, all art is just me retweeting all these ideas. But I'm going to try and do this now. This is me paraphrasing, unlike the start. So we have a different type of intellectual property here. And this usually is not copyrighted. The concept of copyrighted, guess where it started? Here in England, we invented everything. Of course we did. It was a reaction once the printing press was creative for people of just getting a story and just reprinting it. And the companies that had the printing presses, not the authors, were like going, hang on, that's our story. We paid for that. And so in 1662, the English Parliament passed the Licensing Press Act. And that required every publication to be registered and regulated. And it would then be approved. So this stopped people just getting someone's story, but they did not protect the authors. This is the thing. It protected the printers, the stationers, to the right to regulate what material could and could not be printed. In 1710, the Statute of Anne was enacted. This was in England and Scotland. And this is where we get the idea of copyright. The copyright is the right to copy something, and that still didn't belong to the authors. It was the right that the machine, the capitalist machine of mass production, had to be able to copyright this. And this then led on to the Copyright Act in 1814 that then extended more rights to the authors. But the problem was, because this was the United Kingdom, these laws only acted in the United Kingdom. So you could have a hit book come out in 1814, and yet some American could then do a print of that book in America, which was a much bigger territory, sell that, and the author and the originators of that story would not get any money. And so we instituted a thing called the Berne International Copyright Convention of 1886, hoping that all the countries would sign up to it. And they did, except for the United States of America. Does this sound quite familiar today of how the United States of America is again acting? The US did join the convention of Berne, the Berne Convention, but didn't do so until 1989. So in the US, they're scratching their chins going, right, yeah, this is okay. Right, I can see what the British do, but we ain't signed up to what the British are doing. You know, we didn't throw all that tea in the sea for nothing. We didn't have that revolution for nothing. We'll have our own version, right? And In the US, the Constitution grants Congress the right to establish copyright and patent laws. We're not talking about patent laws, that's something else. And they enacted their own copyright acts right back in 1790. So we've got two different copyright acts emerging of this. And this is like this up until today. This is the first thing you've got to understand, is copyright is not the same the world over. Every single territory has its own rules on copyright. They're very similar, but they do change. But what's more important is if the US decides to enact its laws on copyright and ban something, it doesn't mean the United Kingdom does, right? And this is what you'll start to understand. The subjectivity of deciding whether someone has breached copyright is not like discovering if someone committed murder, because this is so vague. We've created rules that are very vague, and as we can see, were set up to benefit not the authors, but the machine that are now developed that could extract large amounts of money through mass production. This is something that mass media requires, and I am all for mass media then having rules that make sure the actual people that create the thing that's being sold, because you've got to understand, when you buy a book, you're buying the leather binding or cardboard binding, the paper, the ink, you're buying the machine where it's printed on, the people who stitched it together, and the lorries and airplanes that distribute it around the world. That physical thing is what you've bought. The story is not in the book. The story is when you open the book up, you then look at the black printed ink there, and that creates in your consciousness a story. That's what art is, right? You interpret that story yourself, but the story is not actually in the book. It is in the book. We say it's in the book, and it's great to think of it. But in reality, it's not. And so we have to create a convention that says that book contains another thing, like a ghost in the machine. It's like there is a spirit exists in that book, and it is that story. And that story is actually, it's an embodiment of the ideas of an individual. That is the convention. Now that is so usefully pragmatic and utilitarian as an idea, but it has limitations philosophically. The Copyright Act that the US brought in 1790 was modelled on our British Statute of Anne. Of course it was. And it protected people's works. And that is how copyright originated, right? So we can see, if we simplify that, copyright is how creators can earn from the mass production of media. Does that all make sense? That is now the end of part 2. We're now going to go and move on to part 3, which is going to be called Fair Use and the Limitations of Fair Use. Copyright restricts people's ability to copy something. If you saw a nice poem and you read it in a book, and you thought, I love that poem. So you got out a little bit of paper and you wrote that poem down yourself and stuck it in your wallet so you could look at it at a later date. You have breached copyright. It's not something that companies do. It's not what other artists do. We all breach copyright when we copy something. Now, in the old days, all copying had to be done physically. You may have borrowed your mate's album and recorded it onto a cassette tape. You did breach copyright at that time, but there was only one copy of it. And we are going to now talk about fair use rules, which would then come in and say, well, that's fair use. And there's a very specific reason why copying a record onto tape is fair use. The internet comes and completely destroys this, because you now can take someone's work, copy it exactly, because the work if it's tangible, it can often be reduced to zeros and ones, to digital form. And because it can be, you can now put something up on the net, and literally 10 minutes later, that thing that you have copied has been recopied by digital technologies and the internet 1 billion times. Right? We are not dealing with a company making books, printing 1,000 books, and then realizing someone's also printed another 200 and they're benefiting from that. For me, this changes things, right? So because all the way through the history of people creating creative works, people have copied them, and they had to put some limits on the copyright laws. In America, this is called fair use. In the UK, it's not. We have our own rules of fair use. Every country, every territory has its own use of fair use. What is fair use? Fair use is a legal doctrine that allows limited use of the copyright material. You don't need permission as long as it conforms to these ideas that I believe are quite vague. The copyright holder does not have to give permission. You can just do this as long as you're utilizing fair use. It's a defense against copyright infringement claims, right? And it allows for a number of things. And I have a list of the things which come from the British. The Americans will be slightly different, but this is the British criteria for what they call fair dealing. In the UK, it's called fair dealing. So number one, you could copy stuff for non-commercial research and private study. If you're doing a degree in something, you're allowed to copy the material. This allows teachers to also photocopy extracts from books and hand it out to their students, which is not a private space, but it is for private study. And that's why you can get away with that. The next criteria is for text and data mining for non-commercial research. So this is where AI has gained ground, and this is why it's hard to pin AI for breaching copyright, because what it's doing is taking all this work and it's mining it. Now, in the old days where people were doing research and they were trying to understand stuff, they could have well copied all sorts of different material, assimilated into their research. So this was really to protect people's research folders. But obviously in the digital realm, that changes, right? The third criteria is criticism, review, and the reporting of current events, right? This is where the news works. But actually the news is still limited because it can't use photographs. Now, that rule we will come to in a minute, but you start to see this is all really vague, you know. So when I was doing my talk the other night, when I'm sat there, you know, and I've got a little laptop in the background and it's showing a silent version of the Sabbath gig and I am sort of reviewing it, is that fair use? Now, some of you might say, well, no, Andy, because you did it for a long time. If you just done it for 10 minutes, that would be fine. And then some people say, yeah, if you only use 30 seconds of something, or you only use 5 minutes, right? You may have noticed that we have not come across the length you utilize. This does not exist. There is one of the misconceptions, right? If YouTube decide to do that, that is their criteria. And this is what we're starting to get to, is that the rules are not being followed. But this is logically, will hopefully come out of this lecture as we go on. Right, what's the next criteria for fair dealing in the United Kingdom? Teaching, related to non-commercial research and private study. Teachers are allowed to copy stuff, take it home themselves and go through it. Helping disabled people. If you take a book and turn it into Braille, theoretically, you can do that commercially and you won't have to follow copyright, which seems really strange. And the last one is, there's two more. The second to last one is time shifting. So that means that you can't see it at the time, so you can record it and watch it another time. That allows video cassette recorders to be made, you know, cassette recordings to be made. And so you go, right, you can copy it, so you can play the thing in your car because you've only got a tape player in your car, but you can only need one copy. If we find you doing hundreds of copies, now that moral imperative that you can't do loads of copies is not in here. It's an interpretation of this time shifting rule here. Right, here's where it starts to get really vague. Parody, caricature, and pastiche. So if you're parodying someone or a piece of art, that's allowed. That allows for comedy. That allows for you know, taking a song and changing the lyrics. And I wonder how much you could get away with that. Right, so I've got a couple of notes from the United Kingdom fair use. I'm going to read these out now, so that this will now be another breach of copyright. And this is coming from the government website. It's their definition of copyright from the government website. Does the use of the work affect the market for original work? In other words, you're taking money away from the artist by doing this. I think that's pretty important. And I don't believe I was on Saturday. If the use of work acts as a substitute for it, causing the owner to lose revenue, then this is likely to be unfair to the author. I agree with that 100%. Yes, it does. But I don't think I was doing that. I don't think it was acting as a substitute. I don't think anyone would go along and say, oh, I want to watch the Sabbath gig for free. Oh my God, there's a bloke here and he's sat wittering on about a load of rubbish while all his sycophants all sit there, you know, laughing their heads off at what he's saying, except for that communist bloke who's come in and had a go at him. And in the background, there's a sort of semi-out of focus version of the gig with no sound. I'll watch that instead. That's just as good. So who's that? Is that Steven Tyler? Bloody hell. You know, that, I don't believe it was a substitute. So we can start to see my argument now starts to have legs, doesn't it? Because I don't think I breached fair use. So why did I get a copyright strike? Interesting, isn't it? Right, so let's now go through the limitations of fair use. Two important examples of limitations and exceptions to copyright are the fair use doctrine found in the United States. Now, I just read that. And I haven't told you. I just started talking and I read it. Am I breaching copyright by doing that? It's interesting, isn't it? But what this limitations of fair use, and this is coming from the American idea of this, and there's a number of limitations. One of the limitations is that if you copy something, how far do you have to change it until it's no longer that thing? And that's where we see all these arguments in court. Did this person copy this song, right? That is one of the limitations of copyright. As you start to change it, there will be an imaginary line. And once you cross that line, you are no longer disobeying copyright. Another limitation is that copyright protects the expression of the artist. So if you write, say, Moby Dick, you put that out and it's about a bloke trying to get a great big whale. If somebody goes, oh, well, look, that book, I'm now going to write a book about somebody trying to catch a whale. Even though you may take great gobs of information, that news story, the idea of writing a book about someone trying to catch a whale, you cannot copyright. So you may wonder, what would be a difference between US copyright laws and UK copyright laws? I've grabbed this from the US advice on copyright. Here is an actual example of how that differs. In the US, yes. In the US, in stark contrast to those copyright laws which have developed from English law, edicts of government are not subject to copyright, including edicts of foreign governments. That's one of the differences we're talking about. And that goes on and on and on. So as we see, copyright was created because of mass production. When we get to music, that would have existed on printed notation. You know, people would write a song, then they would sell that song, that piece of paper with the music on that you could take home and play on the piano. If you were to copy that, that would be a breach of copyright. Now, in the 20th century, suddenly music changes. We have the music industry emerge, and the music industry is really, more accurately, the recording industry. We get two great big things emerge. One is the recording of objects, recordings on objects, albums, tapes, CDs, all that stuff, physical stuff that you bought. You know, God knows the tens of thousands of pounds I've spent here on all this lot over the years, that physical stuff. But also we've got the radio, we've got concerts. And so this copyright law gets interpreted, and it's very positive, because what it's doing is protecting the artists. In this mass production world, where you've got entities that own the means of production for arts, music, you know, the record companies, the venues, the agencies, copyright sat there protecting those artists. And where they didn't get diddled and ripped off, these artists were able to create millions and millions of pounds from their creative work. We're at the back end of a generation of artists that came up through rock music where that was negotiated well, because it wasn't before. And we have a whole bunch of multimillionaires sat there and they are influencing our culture. You know, they are saying this is bad and that is bad. They are millionaires and they are the only people benefiting from copyright at the moment. And the reason why they're moaning is because these rules that work when applied to the mass production that used to exist don't work anymore. There is no music industry anymore. Mass media is now owned by organizations like Google, YouTube, X. All these things are the distributors of music, art, books, films. That's where that now exists. We're all operating with that. That democratizes it. So people can now get straight to it. They don't have to work through a mass media company, but we're still being controlled by them. Now, copyright, I believe, should be putting limits on them, and I don't think it is. And I'm going to try and explain to you why I think that is on this video. So we have something like YouTube, okay? Now, YouTube has its own system of protecting copyright, and none of this applies. None of it. There is an AI component. So when you upload a video to YouTube, you put it up and then the AI scans it for copyrightable material. If it spots it, it then goes to the artist and goes, well, what do you want to do? If you are spreading my videos out there on the internet, I don't have enough power. I haven't gone through the process of copywriting, although there are some limitations and I could turn around and say, I don't want you to use it. But if I turn around and say that's me, I'm not like obeying fair use or fair dealing or any of these rules. So I think YouTube's copyright process does not follow this. It basically goes to the copyright holder and says, what do you want to do? This bloke's used some of your stuff. You could block it completely or just block it in certain territories. This is what happens. The ideas of fair use can be twisted by social media because it can say, well, it can't be used in that country and we can't have it there and I can't have it there. Quite regularly when I use something off the internet, I will get a message saying that it will not be viewable in Belarus or Russia. You know, when you click on a video and it said this video can't be watched in your territory, it's because in your territory, your copyright laws do not cover it. And so this creates even more vagueness in it, and nobody knows what is fair use and what is not. So the copyright holder can now say, block it. Now you can say, yeah, but it was a parody, don't care, block it. Yeah, but I was using it as an educator, block it. But I only used a portion of it, you didn't lose any money of it, it's enabling you to make, well, don't care, block it. That's what I'm opposing to. These sets of rules are not being applied by YouTube. YouTube has its own system, and you go and read the guidelines. Now, they could say, I'm not going to block it, but I'm having all the money from it. So someone could create a 3-hour video. They can put 30 seconds of somebody's song, a song that usually is part of the big machine out there, right, is registered and locked in. And so that 30 seconds then sends to the copyright holder and they look at what the copyright holder said and said, yeah, I don't mind that, put it out there, it's great, but I'm having all the money for that. Now, what that does for me is it kills an incentive for the YouTuber to create these types of videos. Now, on my copyright video, the overwhelming response from my copyright discussion was people saying, I have bought 12 albums, I have bought a whole catalogue, I have downloaded this, I got into this band. So I am generating money. I see myself as helping the copyright holders. When I say we should get rid of copyright, there's a reason for it. It's not because I'm trying to do the artists out of them. But what I don't agree with is that the people that are dictating this are usually the ones that have already made a ton of money out of it. So it's quite a left-wing idea here. But I don't actually mind that, right? I personally would be happy if the rule was, copyright holder, Andy Edwards has used a minute of your stuff. Do you want a minute of the monetization of his video? That seems fair. Totally happy with that. Or even, if you use that song, that artist will get 10%. Use 2 songs, that artist will also get 10%. Right? I don't really mind that. I would just like to be able to think that I am not working for another artist at the detriment to myself. Right? The artist is choosing whether I get blocked or demonetized, right? But this has happened on my site possibly 1,000 times. Most videos I put up are just me talking, and that's why I do that. But I also will sacrifice some of the income from the channel. Now, you have to understand, I don't make a lot of money from this channel, but I earn my living from this channel. This is what I now do, okay? I don't know what else I would do now. This is what I do. I hope this lasts as long as it possibly will, but it's frightening for me. I have tried to put in place other things. If YouTube was to suddenly go down, I'd have to say to you lot, could you just come over onto Patreon and pay the £5 a month, and hopefully there would be something there for me to build upon, and maybe I would be able to find some other platform and build it up. I'm quite happy to do that. I understand we live in the capitalist country. I understand that this could stop at any moment. I don't have a problem with that. Right? Now, when I put a video up, and this is the big quandary for me, I'm much more empathetic to the weirder forms of music. The weird prog, the jazz fusion, experimental music. And there's a whole bunch of really interesting music out there. Now, the audience here I have developed love that type of music, but they don't want to really deal with new music. Nobody does. So if an artist sends me over a track and they say, this is our latest album, Andy, this happens to me all the time. What they're asking me for is this, that I listen to their album. If I like it, then I create a video with my time and my energy. This video will not get watched, so I now pay for doing that because I get the massive drop there. If I spent a month just reviewing new music, there would be no money. But if I play any of their music, which is the only way I can really sell this new music, I can grab someone. Now, I know how to do this. The way you do this is you don't go out and review new music. I could have a situation where there were like little adverts for artists within the big viewed videos. You know, I may even be able to utilize it in a way where the new music is integrated into a video by using my creative powers, where it's compelling and interesting. It could be that there's ways of doing interesting videos with high views, which has got new music in, right? I would love to be exploring this. I use AI to create the incidental music on my channel because I can't use actual music. I would love to have a bit of Mavish orchestra, you know, underneath my, I can't because the whole video will be demonetized, right? And I am bothered about that with new artists because this happens all the time. They go, can you review my album? And I go, yeah, all right then. I will do it. And when I put their track on, I know it will be demonetized and they will receive the payment for me doing the video. So I contact the artist and I go, I'll do it, but this is going to happen. They go, oh, no way, that's terrible. You can't have that, Andy. You're doing us a favour. They're so kind and nice. They understand it. You're doing us a favour, Andy. You know, we can't do that. But can you check to your copyright people? So they then go to the companies. The artists have been ruled by the copyright companies. When they copyrighted their material, they didn't do it themselves. They went to a company and they start to deal with that company. The company will go, no, we're not doing that. You know, we didn't invest in you. We haven't published your work for you to just give it away to Andy Edwards. No, if he's going to use your videos, we're going to use it. We don't care about your creativity. We don't even care about you trying to market your own stuff. This thing is stalling the transmission of new creative music and less popular old music. That is why I want that rule to change. But this idea that I put something on and then YouTube turns around and says, right, that video is going to be demonetized, Literally the other day, I did a great big video and it had got loads of content in. When I put it up, all the content was registered by YouTube, and it says the copyright holder. Now, the copyright holder might not be the musician either. That's what you got to understand. It could be some company, or it could be some, third cousin of the artist who died 20 years ago, and it's passed on to someone who doesn't even know who the artist is, but they've had a letter saying, you're going to get all this money for this artist. And that happens all the time, especially with the artists we cover on this channel. The people getting the money are not the artists, it's somebody else. It might be their kids, might be their family, but often it's not. It gets just passed on to next of kin. And I have had practical experience of this. It is absolutely the case, right? So I've put myself off because this is just so twisted and weird, right? What was I talking about? Can't remember. So to get back on track, I made a video the other day. I put all these copyright material in. They said you can use it, but you will have to demonetize it. And there was a joke in there where I was chatting about a singer, and I went, yeah, they're quite a good singer, but in the end, they're not this. And then it cut to one note being sung by Sarah Vaughan. One note. And they blocked the people who own that film, not Sarah Vaughan, not the music. The people who own the bit of film blocked the whole video. Then, because it's up on YouTube, I can either delete it, recut it, which sometimes I do, or I can press a button on YouTube that will trim it out. But my God, it's like a hatchet job when that happens. You have options when this happens. You can mute the audio, which in the case of that, it would just be a silent film of Sarah Vaughan singing, but it wasn't the audio. In this case, the only option was to trim it out. So you have to follow those. I'm finding I spend, when I edit stuff together and I try and make something high quality with lots of content in and make something entertaining for you and promote these artists, that after all that work, it's usually butchered by YouTube because of this copyright control. But you have to understand, this is not a copyright strike. I have had this a million times, and I thought I was dealing with those sets of rules. So I thought, I'll put the Black Sabbath thing up in the background, right? I'll provide the service. If there's any money that's made and they want to grab it all because of copyright, they can have it. They can have all the money. And here I am saying, try and get in the live stream, go and pay for the ticket, and then just have me running in the background. It'll be more fun. And also, every time on that screen, the charity came up, I was saying to the people, go and donate to the charity. I was quite happy for the Sabbath people to have all the money that I made that day. I would have been quite happy to that. I would have been quite happy for them to come to me and say, look, you benefited there, pay us £100, you can put the video up, then donate it to charity. I would have been quite happy, but a copyright strike, which is what I was complaining about, is not a video being blocked. It's not a video being demonetized. It's a completely different thing. And this is what nobody seemed to understand that was in the comments. I am not really moaning about being blocked. I don't mind it. It's part of the job. It shouldn't be there because it stops not me benefiting, but it doesn't benefit the audience, and it doesn't benefit the more obscure esoteric artists out there, right? I would say that those esoteric artists would go, like the next album, we're not going to copyright. And that is my point. Don't copyright it. So we can collaborate. Right? And if you came to me and said, we're going to have an album come out on that day, I'm not going to register the copyright. You can make your video. You try and make it as popular as you possibly can. We will work with you. An artist should be working with me. We should have incredibly compelling videos coming out where the audience is going, I'm looking forward to this album release thing that Andy's doing, because it's always so much fun. And the last time they were in a hot air balloon, and they were throwing CDs out, and then when they were watching them, whatever it is that is like all Mr. Beastie and great. That's the future for music. And the only way that can work is if the artists stop having copyright and work with these things. Well, how would they make their money? Once they haven't got copyright, it will allow their material to be shared. It will allow their material to get out there. People will be able to remix it, reuse it, and all that type of stuff, which most people will, because this only ever happens when you get monetized and you're in a situation like me. Some kid can put the video out. Everyone was saying, I don't understand how these people can stream this. Some kid's done it just to be naughty. They've run it, proper live stream, breaking the law, and then when it's been found out, it's got taken down, and they've laughed and said, they don't care. It doesn't affect them. A copyright strike is this. I've got something up online. The AI, which measures, which is a set of rules I understand, that's got nothing to do with it. The powers that be were actually aware of what I was doing. They had companies out there scouring the internet. The reason why mine was shut down and others weren't is because there was a lot of people watching it. That's why. And they spotted it and they thought, we're not having this. And because they are more powerful as an entity than me, right? They go to YouTube and they say, this bloke is broadcasting this, I want a copyright strike. I have no problem with it being taken down. But what I actually experienced was a message coming through saying, you've had a copyright strike. If you have 2 more of these strikes, you will be taken down completely. You will not be able to put your channel up and you will not be able to set any other channels up. It's over for you in terms of YouTube. And that's not based upon fair use. It's not based upon these copyright laws. It's not even based upon the completely different criteria that YouTube uses. It's based about somebody picking up the phone or filling a form out and saying, shut that person down. Now, I'm pretty sure no one's going to do that. They did that because they were just trying to keep their feed as pure as possible. And they didn't want anybody interfering with this. And there was no room for subtlety to go, well, this guy's actually helping us here. He's helping what we're doing. He's not hindering it. It was too clunky. They had no maliciousness against me. But the big Achilles heel with this one is obviously a big company can go to any YouTuber and give them 3 copyright strikes and they're gone. And then they got to take it up with them. That's what my issue is. It's not with taking money away from artists. It's that. Now, I was on this video going to get into the back end and show you the difference between being blocked or demonetized and a copyright strike. I now have a copyright strike on my channel. I can't do any live streaming for 7 days. Not big of an issue. I'll give it 7 days and then I'll do my next live stream, which I'm very looking forward to because it was great live streaming. I have now discovered how easy it was and how much I love doing it. So I'm going to do more of it. And I think you lot will be excited about that. Sounds no problem. Because I'm a bit of an anxious, worrying type, there's a little bit of me that worries that I have this strike against me and that somebody else could come along and go, right, let's just do another copyright strike against Andy. Right, that is terrifying. That feels like an abuse of power. And also, I know that in terms of fair use, I've gone through, I think I've pretty much proved that I wasn't breaching copyright. So what the hell's happened? This is not right. Now, why is this happening? And I tell you why, is because copyright is now no longer used to protect the artists. It's being used to protect YouTube. It's being used to protect Meta. It's being used to protect Google. That's what's being protected here. So that has been my lecture. As you can see, it was a little bit more organized than normal. This is what I used to do when I was a teacher. I would go in and do a lecture like that to the kids, and then we'd have a chat about it and have a laugh. What you get here is the chat and the laugh. Sometimes I'll make a video and it does need me to come out and do something that's a little bit more objective and nailed. I hope this was objective, and I hope it was subjective enough to get my viewpoint in underlying it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more lectures like this on music business stuff, which as far as I'm concerned is never that much of a success, I wish I had a channel where it was creative musicians coming to it and I could speak to them. That audience is far smaller than those who want to know whether Dave Gilmour's a good guitarist or not. That's the bread and butter here. But if you do want me to do more of these, even though you are smaller in audience, you need to like, subscribe and share. That's what you need to do. You also can give me a bit of financial remuneration, because in doing that I will go, that audience was kind to me and supported me doing this. Somebody had a go at me the other day as like I was some sort of capitalist just getting money. I do get money. I earn money from doing this, right? But I don't earn a lot of money, and the cost both personally in terms of time and to myself is quite a lot. When you get to the end of the month, it's tight. If I ever benefit even more from you lovely people that have supported me through all this, and I thank you, and I can't tell you how kind. And that's why I enjoy the live stream, because you lot, the subscribers, not the outside hoi polloi, you were so beautiful and kind and funny and entertaining. And I just loved it. And I thought, my God, then everyone said, I really enjoyed your live stream. I think, well, I enjoyed chatting with you. It was lovely. Now I know how lovely you all are in real life. I'm going to want to do it more. But to do this, I need to get paid. So, for example, if you go to my Patreon, I'll explain this one to you. I've got nearly 1,000 people on Patreon. That's powerful, right? I wish the prog and fusion world realised that I have, as well as this YouTube, 1,000 music fans just there getting direct emails about anything I put up, right? If an artist came to me, famous artist, say, I don't know, I won't mention the name, but say came to me and filmed a video, said, do you want to stick that on your Patreon? God, that's amazing to have you on my Patreon. That's going to sell the Patreon, and I'll put it up to the free members, right? So I've got around about 200 paid members, and in total 1,000. If all the patrons that are free decided to pay up, right, what do they get for their money? Well, what they would get is not much. In reality, I understand that. All they're going to really get is the satisfaction of supporting me. But it's a little bit like buying shares, because if you were to do that, the money that would suddenly appear on Patreon for me means that I would go out and employ people, right? The money would not be spent on me, right? I just have no interest in normal life. I only do creative stuff all day long. I would employ editors, researchers, I would employ like secretaries, cameramen, and it would all probably be just 2 or 3 people that could do all those jobs. That job would be an incredible job for somebody to do. It would be a wonderful thing. And then this can go up a gear. If it goes up a gear, it might then make more money. And then we are into the lovely capitalist situation that I am now building a creative entity. And I promise you, being a creative artist and having the respect for creativity that I have, I will ensure of my best ability that I will do good. In reality, if this does happen in 20 years' time, I might probably be a horrible old man that just took the money and run. And if that's the case, I apologise for being that in the future. And when the film comes out of my life, people can go, well, look at Andy, it'll be like The Godfather Part 3, you know. I try and get out and they drag me back in. So, little bit of acting for you. See, I do everything on these videos. But anyway, that's the point. There is a future for creative music, for prog and jazz fusion. It's a different future, and not many people understand it. I, through flukiness and my personal history, have fluked that here, and I think I can see a way through. The creative artists to establish themselves and be able to bite off their own tangible bit of the internet, because they're not going to make their money through gigs or selling albums or merchandise. That is not where the main amount of money is. The main amount of money will come from lovely people like you that are supporting these artists, right? That's what Spotify should have been. It should have been a cooperative and collective where you put your track up, then you join a sort of online community, and that money is spread out amongst that online community. That would be a much more left-wing approach to the idea that you get out there and your community supports you. I've thought this quite a lot, that the prog community shouldn't just be supporting specific prog bands, the sort of Kickstarter thing that Marillion invented brilliantly. It should actually, the money could go into a great big pot run by people who are kind and want to keep this music alive, and then it's distributed out, not in a communist day, not all equally, but there's a pot of money there to safeguard prog as an idea and safeguard jazz fusion as an idea. Imagine that. That is what I would love to get to. I think I've explained my case here. I've got to the end of the video. I don't need to do the end bits because that's been explained as part of the video. I will be coming back to this. The next one will be about royalties and how they work. I think that needs to be explained. None of this was about royalties. It was about copyright. Copyright is linked to royalties, but royalties need to be explained in a different video. Thanks for watching. See you soon.